Welcome to the channel, guys. It's the Purrely guy, and today I'm gonna bring to the channel my Naturia Purrely deck list. Um, this is probably the version I've had the most success with of the ones that I've tried out, and I think it probably is the one that could give you better fighting chances with the current state of the meta, since it doesn't rely too much um, on XYZ summoning to a certain extent, and you can still hold off a few turns through the barrier. When it comes to the Purely engine, I'm playing three Purely, three My Friend Purely, three Purely Delicious Memory, three Happy Memory, and three Pretty Memory. Um, I decided to not play any field spells or traps because one, I'm playing Caldo for the recycling capabilities. It is not a searchable, but the two cards are of course interchangeable. You can just cut Caldo, but I thought that it could be a good card to play considering you also mill some cards with Sunflower, and as well as Nat Beast. Um, and what I really like about this version as well is that Delicious Memory and Happy Memory offer you protection for your Naturia cards, which are relatively small. So you're able to protect Sunflower from being destroyed by battle, and as well as Naturia Beast. Um, when it comes to the Naturia engine, I'm playing three Camellia, three Milk Crickets. Those are the main starters, and also your main normal summons. Two Blessings and two Sacred Tree. You could play more Sacred Trees. I couldn't really find a space, and I still wanted to fit around 12 to 11 non-engine cards or a little bit more, but it's definitely an option. And it's a great. The main synergy of the deck is that you can discard Sacred Tree with one of these spells, and you're able to replace the card that you discarded with something that you actually want to have in your hand, such as Camellia or Cricket or Blessing if you already have access to those. And the engine also lets you fill up your graveyard with spells pretty fast, so getting access to Noir through Plump becomes much easier. And that's also one of the reasons why this is probably my favorite version currently, because you're able to summon Noir quite often, and when you cannot, you can rely on powerful cards like Nat Beast or Sunflower to stop your opponent, because it's not always possible, of course, to summon Noir, since the engine requires a lot of cards in order to do so. But the fact that you fill up your grave with spells and traps so quick really helps with getting to the final like scope, which is either summoning Noir or summoning Beauty. And some interaction I would like to talk about is, for example, when you normal summon Camellia, you are able to either send Sacred Tree, so you can add Blessing, and therefore, if you have a quick play, you already have three spells in the graveyard, and one of them is a quick play. The other interaction I want to talk about is also Sacred Tree being attached by Plump. In case your Noir would be removed from field and it has Naturia's Sacred Tree attached, that you previously did with Plump, you're able to also get some follow up for next turn, which is not only the one guaranteed by my friend Purely. Um, and when it comes to the non-engine, I opted out for two Prosperity. Now this card is relatively expensive, and I understand if it's not within the budget of some players. And therefore, as a replacement, I would say to play Foolish Burial Goods, which it has a similar function in a certain extent, which helps you fill up your graveyard and gives you more access to your Naturia engine, and as well by itself. And sending three is already two spells in the graveyard, which is, as I mentioned before, very important if you want to try to summon Noir through one. I played Ash Blossoms, Nibiru, Imperm, and Evenly. Those cards are relatively cheap, especially considering the reprints that have happened recently, and I believe those are probably the best non-engine cards you can play that aren't like purely for going second. Evenly is in the deck because sometimes you really need help with breaking boards before you start playing. But this card can, of course, be substituted by Dark Ruler, which is also very nice in this deck since Happiness attacking multiple times can lead to summoning Noir or make a very big Zeus, which against Kashtira, for example, is very nice. Now let's talk about some other cards. Of course, because you're playing Naturia, you can decide to play Vayne to cut some flower in case you're playing against, for example, Labyrinth, which could be more beneficial, for example, for the game plan, or specifically if you feel like you're losing more to spell and trap cards when you're going first, then this is a great option to take into account to play. Then I'm gonna talk about Kurikara. So the deck cannot really play Lava Golem and Sphere modes because you kind of rely on your normal summon in order to get your Naturia engine going, and therefore Kurikara is a bit better, and it can play a very good role in the deck, especially against Kashtira, since the mandatory effect of a Rise Art. Of course, this card by itself isn't enough to fix the problems of the deck, and you probably need one more going second card with paired with it. But it's something definitely to keep in mind. I wanted to talk about Droll as well. Right now, it's not played in too many deck lists, but I do think it's a good hand trap. In general, I believe it with Purely and these other kind of rogue decks, it's important to have some cards that shut down the opponent's turn, and this is one of them. And for the same reason, I included Lancia here. Lancia can really help against Kashtira because they're not able to banish your extra deck or your main deck, so you can keep your resources. And usually their end board is much more simplified compared to beforehand. So it can really help you push through it since you should have enough engine to push through one single interruption or one interruption and some hand traps. Duster, of course, against Labyrinth is very good, or just back row removal in general. So, as well, Lightning Storm. Mind Control and Change of Heart can be played, and for example, in my deck list for YCS Leon, I was playing also a Riser in the extra deck because one of the interactions would be that you're trying to take their Rise Sword and then make a Zeus on it. And you're also able to basically out some of their board. Eclipse is also very good because you have very easy access to Zeus through your Purely engine. Cosmic can be very helpful against things like, of course, that play back row or can play Flygates that are not they're problematic for us. Dark Ruler, as mentioned before, it's a great option to do board clears and everything. As for going first, Judgment, of course, is always going to be a good card. Although I'm not really sure if it's the best in this deck. Personally, I really like this card since a lot of the decks right now in the meta play big levels. So either Labyrinth or Castira or Branded, the top three decks, I would say, play big levels, and this helps stabilize the game and give you a few more turns if you're not able to make Noir or don't start very well. The only conflicting thing that it has with the deck is, of course, Barkin because it's also level 6, but it can definitely be good. And then a pointer is good because it prevents you from getting even lead kaiju or anything that has to do with that, since you can look at their hand and then don't lose to those cards. And that's also why I wanted to include Gozen Match. Now, Gozen Match is a bit is interesting because in the case you only have Noir, you don't really mind having Gozen since theoretically speaking you should be winning, since you should have at least one pretty memory attached to Noir usually. And you can kind of stall the game and kind of like they can't really play through it. Now, Gozen doesn't self protect itself in the case of Kashtira, since they can just special summon Unicorn. But of course, if they don't know that you're playing it and they start with Unicorn, it becomes very hard for them to out it. because they're gonna be in need of summoning multiple unicorns in order to do so. So they would practically need birth plus another unicorn or something similar to that. But Gozen also can be played when you have your Naturia engine up. You can literally just summon Plump and keep Plump on field since they're all Earth, and then use the quick effect to banish interruption on when it attaches spells as the main line of interruption. And then at some point when you're ready to do a big noir, you can send your Gozen away by pretty memory effects, and then you can just summon Noir on top of it because you won't be under the Goza match lock anymore. When it comes to the extra deck, I think it might be one of the biggest problems of the deck. Like, it's very tight because of the presence of Kashtira in the format. You need a decent amount of two offs to play in the deck. So I'm playing two Happiness, two Plump, two Noir, and two Zeus, which are the most important ones, and as well two Linguribo, because this deck does suffer the Ibli lock quite a bit. And I am playing also just one beauty. Usually I play like the Kashira players won't banish this because it's not really something they care about when they're going second when they're going first. So it doesn't really matter if you only play one copy of it. When it comes to also happiness, you don't summon this very often. You only do when you're trying to close games. So most of the time, I would actually banish this card of prosperity when I'm going first, and then Nat Beast and Barkin are usually something you play going first. So those are also things that don't really get banished, or like you can even banish a prosperity when you're going second. Donner as well. It's good to add Baguska and other threats, and also it could be one more out to Ibli. And that's it for the extra deck. Apart from the two Linguribos, of course, Zeus is very strong. And Plump and Noir are some of the best cards we have right now. And yeah, I hope you guys like the deck profile. I think this deck is definitely viable for local tournaments, and it's definitely very open in the way you can play it and adapt it to whatever you're facing more often. Since you can prepare your side or also change some cards in the main deck for that. But overall, you're able to kind of counter any sort of strategy because you have Sunflower to negate monsters, you have Veins to negate Spell and Trap, you have Naturia, Beast, and Barkian that are both great options for just going first against specific matchups. And yeah, the deck I have to say is quite nice. I like the way it plays. And one last thing I wanted to mention as well is that because the Naturia engine kind of deck fins your deck. I also like it because you're more likely to hit of purely effect once you have resolved the Naturia cards one or two times. Since usually every time you resolve Camellia, two to three cards get out of your deck. And one interaction that I wanted to talk about as well is that Naturia Mole Cricket by itself is a Naturia Beast. So sometimes if you don't have the power to summon War, it could be also a good idea to just end on Beast and offer protection and with hand traps and try to have follow up for next turn. Because most of the decks right now in the meta like cannot really play through Beast. Like Branded can sometimes, and Cashier also struggles a little bit if they can't beat over it instantly. And that's also why paired with the Grave, it's very good because you can kind of counter the out to Grave since they might have evenly matched or Lightning Storm, but you can negate it with Beast or Barkin depending on the situation. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment. I will see if I have the time to post a combo video for this deck and maybe do some test hands and show off some gameplay and how the deck plays.